What really happened to make Jungkook and Taehyung silent? Why did HYBE only now dare to open this truth? And why did its disclosure actually occur suddenly, just 45 minutes ago? Those questions immediately flooded social media as an emotional statement from HYBE's internal side began to spread and shake ARMY around the world. No one expected that behind the smiles, laughter, and strong chemistry that Jungkook and Taehyung had displayed, there was an emotional burden that even they themselves never knew had been carried for years. Internal sources said the disclosure was not just a clarification, but a form of delayed honesty, an admission of pressure, decisions, and sacrifices that have been hidden to maintain the group's stability and public image. What makes this situation even more disturbing is the reaction of Jungkook and Taehyung themselves. They reportedly did not receive this information in its entirety in the past. The fact that the truth has just been revealed now triggers mixed emotions: shock, hurt, and confusion. Not because there was betrayal, but because there was a feeling of, why did we find out only now? A phrase that supposedly resonated in the internal discussion room after the statement came out. HYBE, in a much more personal tone than usual, implied that difficult decisions were being made to protect members at the most vulnerable time of their careers. But that protection apparently comes at a high emotional price. There are moments that should be shared, there are feelings that should be talked about, but instead they are suppressed for the sake of professionalism and global expectations. The ARMY is torn between anger and anger. Haru, having finally come to understand Jungkook and Taehyung's rarely seen human side, is angry to realize that their idols may be bearing a burden they never chose for themselves. The timeline is filled with speculation, cutscenes, and one big recurring question: will this reveal change Jungkook and Taehyung's relationship going forward? But in the midst of that storm of emotions, one thing was clear. This recognition is not about a sensation, but rather about a wound that ends up being named. About the feeling that finally recognized its existence. And about two artists who, for the first time, are confronted with the emotional truth that has been walking behind them all this time. Silent, invisible, yet real. Will this be a turning point? Or is it the beginning of a larger conversation between artists and the industry that raised them? The answer is not yet there. But one thing is certain: 45 minutes ago, something changed. And once this truth comes to the surface, nothing can ever go back to exactly what it was before. As the minutes passed after the reveal, the atmosphere around Jungkook and Taehyung felt different. Not because there is a counterstatement, nor because of further clarification, but precisely because of silence. A silence that for many ARMY feels much louder than words. No spontaneous uploads, no cheery emojis, no small jokes as usual. And in the BTS world, silence often means something is really being processed. Some industry watchers think this emotional truth may be related to the stressful early phases of a career, when big decisions have to be made quickly without enough discussion space. Jungkook and Taehyung, who were very young at the time, were probably just going through a predetermined plot, without fully knowing the long-term impact on their feelings and personal relationships. The fact that HYBE is now choosing to reveal it actually raises a new question. Is this a form of regret, or an attempt to fix something that has been left too long? On the other hand, Jungkook and Taehyung's closeness became an emotional highlight in itself. Many soldiers recalled small moments that used to feel ordinary, a brief look, a loose laugh, or silence on stage, that are now being reread with new meaning. Do they actually reinforce each other unconsciously? Or are there feelings that they have been keeping, even from each other? The most touching is the realization that this truth is not just about the past, but about how it has survived. Emotions that are never given room to be acknowledged often do not disappear. They just wait for time to appear. And perhaps 45 minutes ago was the moment when everything finally could no longer be saved. HYBE herself has not yet given any further details, as if realizing that not everything should be described in official words. There are parts of this story that are too human to summarize in a press release. And therein lies the weight, because the public can only guess, while Jungkook and Taehyung have to really feel it. Now, the ARMY is waiting, not with curiosity, but with empathy. Waiting is not for the next sensation, but rather for one small sign that Jungkook and Taehyung are okay. One smile, one honest phrase, or even one silence that feels more peaceful than ever. Because ultimately, these revelations remind many that behind global achievements and relentless spotlight, there are hearts that grow, hurt, and learn. And perhaps this is the beginning of a new phase, not just for Jungkook and Taehyung, but also for the way the world sees them. Not just idols, but humans who are finally allowed to feel. And it is precisely at this point that this story feels deeper. Because the emotional truth revealed is not something that can be resolved with a single statement or a single clarification. It lives on in the memories, in a sense that it comes out of the blue, in those little moments when Jungkook and Taehyung might recall the times they used to live without knowing the whole picture. Some people close to their work environment mentioned that after the disclosure, the internal atmosphere changed to become more reflective. Neither tense nor chaotic, but quiet and thoughtful. It's as if everyone realizes that this is not just a public issue, but part of an emotional process that must happen sooner or later. There are things that have been considered normal in the industry, which are now starting to be questioned again. For Jungkook and Taehyung, this moment can be a fragile point as well as a growing point. Fragile because they realize there are parts of their lives that are controlled without full knowledge. It grew because for the first time, the truth was openly recognized. And recognition, no matter how painful, is often the first step to relief. The army itself began to change the tone of the conversation, from wild theories and excessive speculation to calmer messages of support. Many write that they do not need detailed explanations, do not need further drama. They just want Jungkook and Taehyung to be given space to feel, to be angry if necessary, to be sad without having to explain it to anyone. And that's probably the biggest impact of this disclosure. Not a momentary shock, but a shift in perspective. That the idol does not always have to be strong. That silence does not always mean safety. That emotional truth, however late it may come, is still worthy of recognition. There is no exact answer yet about what will happen after this. Will there be an open conversation between the artist and the agency? Will Jungkook and Taehyung's dynamic change? Or will it only get stronger? All are still question marks. But one thing feels real. Since 45 minutes ago, the invisible line has been crossed. This is not the end of a story. This is the moment when something long hidden finally sees the light. And no matter what comes next, the world is now witnessing not just the journey of a global star, but the journey of two human beings who are at peace with the truth about themselves.